Well, 31 players signed since 2018, and we're going to go through all of them right now. You know, we love our rankings here at ESPN, but we're going to put it into tiers: great first, good, average, bad, and just an absolute shocker, because we know there's a few in there, I'm sure, that you guys can't wait to get into. So let's start off with Augie, shall we? And we're starting off with Fred. What do you think?
I think Fred's average at best. I just think that, again, overpaid for him because Man City wanted him that summer. United paid for a player that was a regular in the Brazil squad, but it just wasn't very good. You know, he's just a player that run around and lost the ball quite a lot, didn't really bring anything to the table. So I'm being generous by calling him average.
But when he hooked up with Scott McTominay, oh, that was a lethal force. But that's my opinion right there. Rob, let's go to you. Diogo Dalot for 22 million. Where'd you rank him?
I mean, as things stand, I would say average. He's still a young player. So, you know, if he was to improve and develop in the way that people would expect him, you know, maybe later down the line, you would put him in the good category. Typical of a lot of these players we're going to talk about, in that he's played in a very, very poor team. You know, lots of these players would have looked better in a good team. Well, the team's been poor. So he's looked less than great. At the moment, I would say as a signing just standalone, it's been average.
Average. Well, finally rounding out that 2018-2019 season of signings, Lee Grant, what do you think of that, Augie? Even though it was only 1.7 million.
Yeah, well, rather than talk about Lee Grant, who just didn't do anything of note, it was average, I'd say that Diogo Dalot was bad, bordering on average. I think Rob's been generous with Diogo Dalot. I've seen him defend recently. Can't defend the far post, goes to sleep too often. A lot of goals are down to him. So Lee Grant came and went without being noticed. Diogo Dalot's still there, so I'm going to have a rating on Dalot. Bad.
Rob, sorry, this one falls on you because this is probably going to be the most discussed one. Harry Maguire, 87 million. We're not forgetting that price tag anytime soon. Of course, players don't have, you know, any say in their price tag, but what do you think about this one?
Yeah, you're right. You know, it's important to say at this point that the players don't decide their price tags, but he is the most expensive defender in the history of football, and with it becomes a certain level of expectation. He's not met it, in my opinion. He was very, very close to leaving in the summer for 30 million, which would have been a massive loss in terms of the fee that United paid. I would say at best, it's average, but it's bordering on bad.
Okay, let me just let you chime in on this one, because I know you answered. What do you think? Average at best, but borderline bad?
I think he's been average, Harry Maguire. I think people forget how much of I won't say a good player was in his first couple of years, but he did have an impact in his first couple of seasons, and it just went bad the last 18 months. So I think the last 18 months have been bad, bordering on shocker. But I think generally, overall, he's been average. And I think he's beginning to bounce back this season in the sense that he is becoming a bit of a leader again. So maybe losing the captaincy has put him on course to be average, which isn't saying a lot, but that's where we're at.
Well, let's stay with Augie and see if you can be complimentary about this next man. Bruno Fernandes, the captain. Yes, he's come under criticism for his captaincy and his attitude there, but overall as a player, surely he has to be in the good category, right?
I'm going to put Bruno as great, and we're talking about, you know, it's all in context, isn't it? In terms of all the signings that United have made in the last 5 years, he's been the best by a long way, and I think, you know, Bruno can frustrate people. He frustrates Roy Keane because Roy Keane doesn't think he should be the captain, but if you take the captaincy off Bruno Fernandes, who do you give it to? So the thing with Bruno, he's always there, he's never injured, he always turns up, he can be relied upon to perform, to be fit. And that isn't saying much, considering that a lot of the players miss a lot of games. Bruno is always fit, always there, scores a lot of great goals, a lot of assists. So I don't think you can label him anything more than great, considering what he's been surrounded by.
Rob, well, one of the things that United have said that they needed since Sir Alex Ferguson left too is just the need of a strong backline. Aaron Wan-Bissaka usually is a part of that when he's not injured. Where do you rank him?
If it hadn't been for his little turnaround recently under Ten Hag, I would have said it was bad. I mean, I think that he's probably pushed himself into that average category. Again, though, he didn't have a very long spell in the Crystal Palace team, and then all of a sudden United swoop in with a £50 million bid. Now, Aaron Wan-Bissaka is just not worth £50 million, and that's not his fault, that's the club's fault. But again, it comes with that level of expectation. Ultimately, United should be trying to build a team that they think can win the Champions League, and can you do that with Aaron Wan-Bissaka at right back? Probably not.
Okay, Dan James, what do you think there? 17.8 million.
Well, they made a profit on Dan James, so that's a big tick, because they haven't done that on many players since Sir Alex Ferguson left 10 years ago. So, I mean, Dan James was never good enough. He was just a guy with a lot of pace, and that was his game, just limited to pace. So I don't want to call him bad because he came and went after it. I'd say he was average because there is limitations, but they signed him for a fee and made a profit. He's gone away and not done anything wherever he's been. So I think average.
Rob, what about Odion Ighalo? It was a dream come true for him indeed when he signed. He was a true United fan at heart. 12 million. How do you view his loan?
Average. You know, again, we're talking about a player who's probably not good enough to play for Man United, but he came in at a time when they needed a striker. Probably should have left after his initial loan had expired. he came in, did the job he was supposed to. I would say average.
This is the sign that sums up Man United the last 5 years better than any other signing, because a month earlier than that, they were sat in a room with Erling Haaland. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer thought he'd had a deal agreed with Erling Haaland that they were going to get this striker in, a guy he knew from Molde, a kid he coached as a youngster who knew his dad. Everything was in United's favour. They had a relationship with the father, with Erling himself, and they missed out on Haaland to Borussia Dortmund because they wouldn't accept a release clause in his contract and signed Odion Ighalo. Now, Ighalo was an honest player, did his best, but they went from Erling Haaland in December to Odion Ighalo in January. So it tells you everything about Man United the last 5 years.
Well, what about this next signing now? I'm actually going to go to Rob on this one because it's one we're still scratching our head over, I think. Donny van de Beek, 39 million.
Well, Mark just said that for him, the Ighalo signing sums up Man United. For me, it's Donny van de Beek, a Ballon d'Or nominee in 2019. United paid, nearly £40 million for him. They even brought in the manager, Erik ten Hag, who had him playing well at Ajax, and he still can't get a game. In terms of disastrous signings that Man United have made over the last 10 years, Donny van de Beek is absolutely up there with the very, very worst. And it's going to drag on when he's got, at least a year left on his contract. We could be talking about him in a year's time. Everything that's wrong with Man United's recruitment is summed up in the Donny van de Beek transfer.
Okay, I'm going to give you a 2-for-1 because these are two names I still think people might be surprised were associated with Man United, and it's over £36 million spent on them, and that's Amad Diallo and Alex Telles. How do you rate those two?
Well, Diallo obviously came with a reputation as being one of Europe's brightest young stars from Atalanta. That was a gamble on a young kid with potential, but hasn't worked out. But, he might come good. I don't think he will, but I think he might come good. So I'd say he's average. Telles, there's another example of United just panicking and trawling around looking for somebody who could play left back at the death of a window. And I think he was bad. I mean, talented player, but he shouldn't have been anywhere near a Man United team. So a desperation panic buy when they'd been left it too late, basically, to sign a left back.
Next one, Rob. I know this one's kind of hard to judge because he's definitely one for the future, but Facundo Pellistri, 8.5 million.
Yeah, again, as things stand, probably average. United would hope that he's going to develop into a first team regular. Maybe we'll talk about him being a good signing in the future. But average, we're talking about another average player.
Okay, let's end on a good note, or probably, I think this one he came on a freebie, Edinson Cavani. How'd you rate that one?
I think Cavani was a good signing. I mean, obviously, he came on big wages, probably overpaid for what he was. Again, he scored some big goals. It helped United get to the Europa League final, scored the Europa League final. I think Cavani, for me, looking back, was a good signing. It's just a shame they didn't get him when he was younger. He could have been a great signing, but I think he was a good signing.
I'm going to have to get both of you to weigh in on. Rob, we'll start with you, but it's none other than Jadon Sancho, 85 million.
As things stand, it's a shocker. Sums up United's recruitment in that he was billed as the answer to United's problems on the right wing when he signed, and he's a guy who wants to play on the left. That's a very, very basic scouting error that you've signed a guy to play in a position that he doesn't really want to play in. Obviously, he's fallen out with Ten Hag now. He looks like he's going to have to leave. They're going to have to take a massive loss at the moment. Unless things turn around dramatically, which I can't see, it's an absolute shocker.
It's a shocker, but I think a lot of that is not down to him. I mean, obviously, I think some of it's down to him in the sense that I think his attitude lets him down at times. And I think when he arrived, he wasn't in the best possible shape. But don't forget, he arrived just after missing a penalty in the Euro 2020 final, and that probably affected his mindset as well. So I still think that Jadon Sancho can be a good signing for Man United, but the clock's ticking.
Rob, a man that went from winning it all with Real Madrid to probably wondering what's going on at Manchester United, Rafael Varane.
Average, I would say. He was obviously good last season. I think he was a good signing at the time for United, that United needed that kind of winning mentality, that leader in the dressing room. Again, United have got a history of overpaying for players who are coming towards the end of their careers. Real Madrid don't make a habit of letting really, really good players leave. If Real Madrid are trying to let a player go, there's probably a reason for that.
Augie, well, we broke the news and did a hit when this signing came through, so it's only fitting that I have you rate it now. Cristiano Ronaldo. Oh my days, did we ever anticipate it would end so bitterly? If
you just take it in terms of what he did on the pitch in that first season, you have to say it's a great signing because he scored loads of goals. And then the second season, it became a pain for the manager and just a distraction. And again, didn't really want to, do what he was asked to do. But his professional standards were way, way higher than a lot of the players he was playing with at the time at United. So it's really hard to, describe Ronaldo's time there. So I think that in many ways he was a shocker in terms of what he cost the club. But I think overall, he was a good signing because he scored lots of goals. I think he shone a light as well on how bad, and I won't say unprofessional, but how lacking in professionalism, shall we say, some of his teammates were. So I think Ronaldo shone a light on that. And United are still trying to rectify that, but he had the right attitude. He just put it in the wrong kind of way. He kind of displayed it in the wrong way.
Rob, I'm going to give you a 2-for-1. We'll start with Tom Heaton because he came on a free, and then I'm going to give you a big one in terms of Antony, which we know is still quite a controversial name right now.
Tom Heaton, average, barely played, but a good character in the dressing room, a former United Academy graduate who came back. In terms of Antony, I don't like to be too harsh on players who are still at the club because I've always got time to turn it around. But right now, it's in the shocking category because this is a player that was available from Ajax for around 40 to 50 million pounds earlier in a window. United ended up paying more than 85 million pounds for him. I imagine that Ajax were absolutely laughing when they got that final bid in, because he's just not done it. He just doesn't look like an 85 million pound player. He hasn't got the goals, the numbers of assists that you need from a winger who costs that amount of money. Still time for him to turn it around, but right now, judging on what we've seen at Old Trafford so far, shocking.
Well, still one of my favorite players on the pitch. Augie, what do you think about Casemiro? Where would you put him?
He's not one of my favourite, Alexis. I think, maybe you're overplaying his important. Look, he had a good 6 months last season, but paid too much for him. Contract's way too long. I wouldn't be surprised if Casemiro and Varane are in Saudi Arabia this time next year because they're on so much money. The wages are too high. Sorry, the fee was too high and United can't get rid. So I think this is probably the last season of Casemiro and Varane. Average.
Well, the next one, Rob, I will rank as good, at least for the moment. And if you don't put him in this category, we may have a fight. But Lisandro Martinez, if he will just stop getting injured, surely this has to be at least good, right?
Yeah, I would say good. He had a good season last year. Obviously, there were questions about whether he could be, a centre half in the Premier League. I think he answered those. I think the fee was relatively good value, the money that they paid to Ajax. The injuries, the two injuries are unfortunate, but are a little bit of a concern. I don't think that he's been the same player when he was playing at the start of this season. Relatively speaking, given that we've talked about a load of bad and average transfers, I think at this time it's a good transfer.
Augie, I'll give you a pair of Dutchmen, Malacia and Weghorst. How do you rank both?
Thanks for that. I thought two real giants of the Man United squad. Tyrell Malacia, he's basically. Yeah, he's a good cover left back. I think Malacia's been a good sign in the sense that he was signed to give Luke Shaw some competition. That worked. Obviously, he's injured right now. Has been injured for a while. Weghorst, you can't fault the guy for effort. He gave everything to play for Man United, and his work ethic was incredible. But he should never have been in a Man United shirt. He wasn't good enough. I mean, he just simply wasn't good enough. His effort and his work ethic was fantastic, but his ability was just not Man United level. So he was bad.
Rob, I'll round out this category with 2 for you as well in terms of Christian Eriksen, who came on a free, and Dubravka.
Dubravka first, again, a reserve goalkeeper who never played. So average. Christian Eriksen, I would say, is good. Again, though, it's a signing that kind of sums up United's recruitment in that he's a good player, signed in a good deal because he came on a free transfer. But United have asked him to do too much. At United last year, he was asked to play more than 40 games, something that he hadn't done since he was at Tottenham. As things stand, again, I would say a good signing, but again, another signing that kind of sums up where United squad's at.
All right, well, now we get into the signings that were made in this latest transfer window in the summer. So, of course, we'll keep an eye on the fact that they still need time to prove themselves. But, Augie, let's start off with you. The man up front, Man United's answer to Man City's Viking in Erling Haaland, Rasmus Højlund. Has he impressed you so far? Where would you put him so far?
Yeah, I like Højlund. I think he brings quality, and again, that determination to United, which they've lacked at times, but obviously hadn't, as we're talking now, hasn't scored a Premier League goal yet, but he's scored 6 in the Champions League, and I think 5 or 6, whatever it is, he's scored plenty of goals in the Champions League. He's joint top scorer with Alvaro Morata, but despite scoring all of his goals, he's lost every game, but that's down to United, so the team itself. So I think Højlund, the jury's out right now, but I definitely think that with the right players around him, with the right service, he will be a good signing for United. So potentially a great signing. Not had many of those over the last few years, but he's 20 years old, needs a lot of help, but I think he's been a real positive so far.
Well, Rob, next one, even though, again, we keep saying that they've just come to United and they need some time, but it seems like the jury already feels like it's out on Mason Mount. Not many people seem to be impressed or feel like he's the right fit for Manchester United. 64.2 million. Where do you put him? You're
right, saying that it doesn't look like it's a fit right now, because if you spend that amount of money on a midfielder, the assumption is that he's going to come in and be a regular starter every single week. But we're only a few months into the season and he's already struggling to get a game. He was left on the bench for the Manchester derby, United's biggest game of the season so far, and he can't get a game. And in terms of profile and fee, I think it's an average deal right now. The problem is that we could be talking about this in a year and it could be bad or even worse. He's not had the impact that people expected him to have, even this early in his career. It's average, bordering on bad.
Augie, what about Onana? Keeping in mind that even the David De Gea struggled when he first started in the Premier League. Remember Sir Alex Ferguson talking about beefing him up. But Onana, again, still early in his career, but what do you think?
Yeah. I like Onana, and I might be in a minority. I think Onana is a good signing. He could become a great signing, but obviously that will take time. But people are forgetting how bad David De Gea was last season, how many mistakes he made, how many costly mistakes. Severe away in the Europa League, FA Cup final. Now, the reason why he left was because Ten Hag wanted a goalkeeper who could play with his feet and play higher up the pitch. Now, Onana can do that, but obviously he's had a shaky start with some pretty bad errors. But I think he's adjusting to the team and he's adjusting to the Premier League. So I think Onana is a good signing, and I just think people who are not prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt need to get David De Gea out of their heads and give him back this goalkeeper, which I think is a good goalkeeper.
Rob, what about Amrabat? I feel like once that was signed, sealed and delivered, a lot of the United faithful were excited about this one.
Yeah, and that's true of a lot of these players that we've spoken about. You know, before they signed, they're meant to be the key to everything, the player that's going to come in and change everyone's fortunes. I think there was a little bit of that with Amrabat, given that he had such a good World Cup with Morocco. But in terms of his performances so far during his very short Man United career, I don't think he's hit the levels that people kind of expected him from. At the moment, it's a low-cost deal for a player who seems like he's a squad player. So it's average, bordering on bad. Again, United will hope that he will find his feet in the Premier League and maybe will turn out to be a good signing. But right now, it's very, very average.
I'll get another keeper for you, Bayern. How do you rank that one?
No idea. Nobody's seen him play. I mean, it's what the situation with Bayern, and it's a point that Ten Hag hasn't decided to use him in the Carabao Cup yet, and I think that could be a mistake because we know that Onana is likely to go to the African Nations Cup in January. It could go to the situation where January starts, Onana's gone, and Bayern's got to play for the next 6 weeks. So that's bad management by Ten Hag. It's impossible to give him a rating because he hasn't played, and he should have played. Really, should have played at least one game in the Carabao Cup.
Rob, what about this one? They say never go back to your ex, but don't tell Johnny Evans that because he came back and it was all for free. It's definitely a blast from the past and a lot of nostalgia seeing him there. But where do you rank this one?
I would say good. It's a very, very low-cost deal. A, he's played more games than perhaps he expected. And B, his level has been even higher than a lot of fans expected. Well into his 30s, but still performing at a decent level in the Premier League. I would say good.
Augie, we'll let you end things. Sergio Reguilón, I know it's a loan. How do you rate this one?
We haven't seen a lot of him. And there's been games when he could have played, he hasn't played. And Ten Hag has favoured Victor Lindelof at left-back, who's right-footed in centre-half. So that doesn't suggest that Ten Hag's convinced by Reguilón. There's a question mark over why he hasn't succeeded at Tottenham. He's a talented player, but it hasn't really worked out. So he's an average signing, but we haven't seen enough of him. But if he's given a chance, he could do well. But ultimately, they've got 3 left-backs. And they don't need 3 left-backs. So it was a desperation signing because of injuries, but I don't think we'll see him beyond the end of the season.